So for this lesson, we are looking at DNA, and in particular, we're looking at what does it do, the functions, as well as what does it look like, the structure of DNA. To get an understanding of what DNA actually does, it's really helpful to get an idea of an analogy or something that kind of compares it. So in the case of building a skyscraper, for example, what's going to be really important is that before you actually start the building process, you're going to need the plan. We're going to call this like the master copy. And this master copy is going to contain every tiny detail of how to build that entire skyscraper. So whether it's a toilet up on the 4th floor or, a window seal on the 78th floor, all that information is right in there in that master copy, that original. And it's huge, right? So where are you going to keep something that is that big and that contains so much information and is that precious? In the case of if you're on a job site, you're going to usually have some kind of trailer or some kind of office where all that information is kept. And in the cell, instead of keeping it in a trailer, because, your cells are too small for that kind of thing, instead you're going to be keeping it in the nucleus. So for DNA, we know that it is kept in the nucleus and it does not leave. So if you want to be able to get the information from this blueprint here, from this original master copy, what are you going to need to do? Well, first of all, it doesn't make sense to take some 600-page or 1,000-page document with all the drawings for this entire building, bring that out onto the work site just to put in a window on the 142nd floor. Instead, what you're going to do is you're going to copy it, and that copy is a lot more disposable, and it's just going to contain the information that you need instead of the entire thing for building the whole building. So you're going to copy what you need, bring that out onto the work site, and you can finally build. And so in the same way, DNA is going to have all of the information for building every single part of you. Every protein is going to be coded for by DNA, and every cell in your body has an entire set of DNA. But you don't need to send the DNA out into the cell to make a hemoglobin protein, for example. Instead, you're going to copy it just the same way that you do with a blueprint. You're going to make a copy. You're going to do the same thing with DNA, only in this case, our DNA is considered kind of that master copy, and then RNA is the copy. Okay, so this right here is like our RNA that we're going to learn about later on this week. And proteins, well, they're the buildings. They're the whole purpose. They're what actually are doing the function of whatever you need in the cell. So DNA is going to code for proteins, but it's not doing it directly. Instead, you're going to make a photocopy of the DNA that's a little bit more disposable and just has the information that you need so that you could build the proteins. So if you take a look in your packet on page 2, there are 2 questions there, questions 1 and 2. In what ways is DNA like a master copy for building a skyscraper? And DNA contains the information to build what? You can go back and review this if you need, but the better choice would be to try to see if you took in the information that we just covered so that you can answer those questions. Okay, now, if we're thinking about keeping everything in context, that thinking skill that we're working on this unit is contextualization. This image here is really going to be the framework for that. Every time I bring something back, how does this fit into it? This image is going to be what the framework, okay? So we're going to look more in detail at what is the structure of DNA. We're going to look more in detail at what is the structure of RNA. We're going to look at how do you make RNA. We're going to look at, once you have RNA, how do you make proteins? What is the structure of proteins? If you have DNA, how do you replicate it? So this is our framework. And in fact, it's actually a framework of biology. Typically, biologists consider this the central dogma or the big idea. Dogma is kind of usually associated with religion, but a central theme around which everything else tends to rotate. So this big idea in biology, or the central dogma, states that DNA is used to make RNA, is used to make protein. In the case of DNA, it can be a template to make itself. Why would you ever want to do that? Well, anytime you are going to be making a new cell, then you're going to need the DNA to be present in that new cell. So your cell has every single gene for making you, for making a new copy of you or a new copy of a cell. So if you're making a copy of a cell and you're having one cell split into two, then you're going to need to take the DNA that's in the original, copy it so that now each of the two daughter cells has that copy, and that process is called replication. So DNA replication is what is going to have DNA be used as a template to make more DNA. And a very similar process is called transcription, where DNA is used as a template to make RNA. We're going to look in detail at that coming Thursday and Friday. And one way to keep this in mind is if you're remembering that there's 4 types of macromolecules, 2 of them are nucleic acids. That Na here stands for nucleic acid. So that is one type of macromolecule, and a different one is protein. So transcription is just about rewriting or retranscribing, which just means to write. You're keeping it in the same language of nucleic acids, but you're going from DNA to RNA. When you actually change languages, you go from talking about nucleic acids to talking about proteins, which are totally different. That is translation. You're changing the language that you're speaking in. So DNA is going to be used to make more DNA or to make RNA via the processes of replication and transcription. RNA is going to be used to make proteins, and ultimately DNA stores the information to make proteins, again, just through an intermediary. Okay, if you need to go back and rewatch the last slide, by all means do so, but hopefully you should be able to complete question 3 in your packet and answer what is the central dogma of biology. Okay, if you were not here today, at this point we watched the first video that is up on Schoology in the Unit 1 folder, Unit 5 Section 1 folder, and that's the one that starts out with the HHMI logo. If you start playing it, and from that you should be able to answer questions 4 through 16 in your packet.